The freezing wind howled like an angry beast as Tallulah Zimmerman clutched her coat tighter around her trembling body, her vision blurred by the relentless assault of swirling snow that had appeared out of nowhere on the Wyoming plains. She had left her teaching position in Sweetwater Creek just 3 hours earlier, determined to reach her sister's homestead before nightfall. But now she wandered blindly through the white wilderness, each step becoming heavier as the drifts deepened around her boots. Wyoming Territory, 1875. The winter had come early and with unusual ferocity. "Hello!" Tallulah called out, her voice immediately swallowed by the storm. "Is anyone there?" Her lips were turning blue, her fingers numb despite her woolen gloves. The mare she'd been riding had spooked at a lightning strike and bolted hours ago, leaving her to trudge through the increasingly treacherous landscape alone. Her teacher's salary had afforded her decent winter clothes, but nothing that could withstand this unexpected blizzard. The 22-year-old stumbled forward, falling to her knees in the snow. The cold bit through her skirts, but she forced herself up again. Giving up meant death, and Tallulah Zimmerman wasn't ready to die. Not when she'd finally found independence, finally escaped her domineering father in Boston to forge her own path out west. "Just keep moving," she whispered to herself, the words emerging as puffs of white vapor. One foot in front of the other, a dark shape materialized in the distance, then disappeared again behind the curtain of white. Tallulah blinked, uncertain if her mind was playing tricks. Then it appeared again, larger this time. "Hey!" she shouted with all her remaining strength. "Help me, please." The figure grew closer, and Tallulah could make out the silhouette of a horse and rider. Hope surged through her veins, giving her a final burst of energy. "I'm here," she called out, waving frantically. The rider approached, and through the blinding snow, she could see a man bundled in layers, a bandana pulled up to shield his face from the biting cold. "Madam," his voice was deep, tinged with concern. "What in tarnation are you doing out here in this weather?" "My horse," Tallulah managed through chattering teeth. She bolted. "I've been walking for hours. I'm trying to reach Cottonwood Creek." The man dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots crunching in the snow as he approached. "Cottonwood's 15 miles north. You'd never make it in this storm." He pulled down his bandana, revealing a strong jaw dusted with stubble and eyes that seemed to assess her condition with practiced efficiency. "I don't have much choice," Tallulah replied, swaying slightly as another gust of wind threatened to topple her. "Name's Owen Palmer," he said, removing his glove to offer a warm hand. "I've got a cabin about 2 miles from here. You'll freeze to death before you reach Cottonwood." Tallulah hesitated. Her mother had raised her to be cautious around strangers, especially men. But her mother had never envisioned her daughter lost in a Wyoming blizzard, either. "Tallulah Zimmerman," she replied, taking his hand. "I'm the schoolteacher at Sweetwater Creek." Owen nodded once, then moved with decisive purpose. "We need to get you warm, Miss Zimmerman. Can you ride?" "Yes." But before she could finish, Owen had stepped closer, his expression grave. "You're showing signs of frostbite already." He removed his heavy buffalo coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth from his body lingered in the fabric, enveloping her in blessed heat. "I can't take your coat," she protested weakly, even as her body leaned unconsciously toward the warmth. "I've got layers and I'm not the one half frozen," he replied pragmatically. In one smooth motion, he lifted her onto his horse, a sturdy chestnut gelding that stomped impatiently in the snow. Owen swung up behind her, his chest solid against her back as he reached around to take the reins. "Lean back against me," he instructed. "Body heat's the best defense against the cold right now." Tallulah, too exhausted to argue, did as she was told. His arms encircled her as he guided the horse through the blinding whiteness, somehow confident of his direction when she could barely distinguish earth from sky. "How do you know where to go?" she asked, her voice weak. "I know this land better than I know myself," Owen replied, his breath warm against her ear. "Been ranching here 7 years now. Storm or shine, a man learns his way." The steady rhythm of the horse's movement and the solid presence of the cowboy behind her lulled Tallulah into a dangerous drowsiness. Her head drooped forward. "Hey now," Owen said sharply, giving her a gentle shake. "No sleeping, Miss Zimmerman. Talk to me. What brings a Boston lady to Wyoming?" Tallulah's eyes fluttered open. "How did you know I'm from Boston?" She felt rather than saw his smile. "Your accent. It sticks out here like a silk parasol in a cattle drive." Despite her condition, Tallulah found herself smiling too. "I came to teach. There's not much need for female teachers in Boston, but out here." She trailed off, shivering violently. Owen pulled her closer, wrapping her more securely in his coat. "Out here we need all sorts of civilization, especially the kind that comes with books and learning." They rode in silence for several minutes, the only sounds the crunching of snow beneath the horses' hooves and the howling wind. Owen kept talking, asking her questions about Boston, about her teaching, anything to keep her alert and conscious. Finally, a dark shape loomed ahead. As they drew closer, Tallulah could make out the sturdy lines of a log cabin, smoke curling from its chimney despite the storm. "Home," Owen said simply, guiding the horse to a small stable attached to the side of the cabin. He dismounted quickly, then reached up to help her down. Tallulah's legs buckled as her feet touched the ground, and Owen caught her with strong hands. "I've got you," he murmured, and before she could protest, he'd swept her into his arms and carried her toward the cabin door. Inside, blessed warmth greeted them. A fire blazed in a stone hearth, illuminating a simple but tidy interior. Owen set her gently in a chair near the fire and immediately began stoking the flames higher. "We need to get you out of those wet clothes," he said matter-of-factly, moving to a trunk in the corner. "I've got some things that might fit well enough until yours dry." Tallulah's proper Boston upbringing flared in alarm. "Mr. Palmer, I couldn't possibly." Owen turned, a flannel shirt and pair of trousers in his hands, his expression serious. "Miss Zimmerman, no disrespect, but this isn't about propriety right now. This is about keeping you alive. Wet clothes in this cold will kill you, Boston manners or no." He placed the clothes in her hands, then moved toward the door. "I'll tend to my horse. You change by the fire. There's a blanket on the bed you can wrap yourself in too. I won't come back in until you call." Before she could respond, he was gone, closing the door firmly behind him. Tallulah stared at the clothes in her hands, then at the roaring fire. Propriety seemed a distant concern compared to the very real threat of freezing. With trembling fingers, she began to unbutton her sodden coat. By the time Owen returned, she was seated by the fire wrapped in his clothes and the thick wool blanket he'd mentioned. Her hair, freed from its pins, hung damply around her shoulders. She draped her wet garments over chairs positioned near the hearth. Owen entered with a blast of cold air, carrying a pot. "Snow," he explained, setting it near the fire to melt. "For coffee and soup." He glanced at her, his expression softening. "Better." Tallulah nodded, feeling strangely shy. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't found me." "No need to think about that," Owen replied, hanging his hat and scarf on a peg by the door. She noticed he was careful to keep his distance, maintaining her comfort despite the intimate confines of the cabin. As he moved about preparing a simple meal, Tallulah studied him. Owen Palmer was younger than she'd initially thought, probably no more than 30. His movements were efficient and practiced, suggesting a man accustomed to caring for himself. Yet there was a gentleness to him too, evident in how he spoke to his horse when he'd returned from the stable, and in how he'd handled her in her vulnerable state. "Have you lived alone out here long?" she asked as he set a steaming mug of coffee in her hands. Owen settled across from her, his own mug cradled between calloused palms. 7 years, like I said. Came out after the war. Wasn't much left for me back east. The war? Tallulah asked cautiously, aware of how fresh those wounds remained for many. Union cavalry, he said simply. After Appomattox, I couldn't see myself returning to Pennsylvania. Too many ghosts. He looked up, a smile touching his lips. So I came where the land was big enough to outrun them. And did you? Outrun them? Owen's gaze met hers, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Most days, the howling of the wind filled the silence between them. Outside, the blizzard showed no signs of abating. Storms settled in, Owen observed, rising to check the stew he'd set to warm. Might be a day or two before it's safe to travel. Tallulah's stomach tightened. My sister will be worried sick. Where in Cottonwood Creek does she live? The Hanson farm. She married Eric Hanson last spring. Owen nodded. I know the place. Good people. When the weather breaks, I'll get word to them that you're safe. You're very kind, Mr. Palmer. He shrugged, ladling stew into bowls. Out here, folks look out for each other. It's not kindness so much as survival. They ate in companionable silence, the hot food reviving Tallulah's spirits. As the evening deepened, she found herself relaxing in this stranger's presence, her initial wariness giving way to gratitude and a reluctant admiration. You'll take the bed, Owen said when they'd finished eating. I'll sleep by the fire. I couldn't possibly. You nearly froze to death today, Miss Zimmerman, he interrupted gently. You need proper rest. His tone brooked no argument. Tallulah acquiesced, too exhausted to protest further. As she settled beneath the thick quilts on his bed, she watched Owen arrange his bedroll near the hearth. Good night, Mr. Palmer, she called softly. And thank you again. He glanced up, the firelight casting shadows across his features. Good night, Miss Zimmerman. Rest easy. You're safe now. As sleep claimed her, Tallulah's last thought was that she believed him completely. The blizzard raged for 2 more days, keeping them confined to the cabin. In that time, Tallulah learned that Owen Palmer was a man of quiet depth. He owned a modest cattle ranch, ran by himself with occasional help from neighboring ranchers during roundup. He read voraciously. His cabin contained more books than she would have expected, everything from Shakespeare to geological surveys of the Wyoming territory. On the morning of the 3rd day, Tallulah awoke to silence. The constant howl of wind that had been their companion had ceased. She rose and moved to the window, pushing aside the burlap curtain. A world of pristine white greeted her, sparkling in the early morning sunlight. Beautiful, isn't it? Owen's voice came from behind her. Tallulah turned to find him watching her, a quiet appreciation in his eyes that seemed directed at more than just the snow-covered landscape. Something fluttered in her chest. It's magnificent, she agreed, turning back to the window. Hard to believe something so beautiful nearly killed me. That's Wyoming for you, Owen replied, moving to stoke the fire. Beautiful and deadly in equal measure. After breakfast, Owen announced he would ride to the Hanson farm to let her sister know she was safe. The trail should be passable by now. I'll be back before nightfall. Tallulah nodded, unexpectedly reluctant to see him go. Please tell Clara I'm well and will come to her as soon as possible. I'll bring back proper women's clothes too, if you give me your size, Owen offered practically. Those trousers won't do for traveling to town, I expect. Tallulah laughed, glancing down at his clothes that engulfed her smaller frame. No, I suppose they won't. After Owen departed, Tallulah busied herself cleaning the already tidy cabin, then settled with one of his books. She found herself reading the same page repeatedly, her mind wandering to the man who had saved her life. Owen Palmer was unlike any man she'd met in Boston or even in Sweetwater Creek. There was a self-sufficiency to him, yes, but also a sensitivity she hadn't expected. He spoke intelligently about books, respected her profession as a teacher, and treated her with unfailing courtesy despite their unusual circumstances. The sun was beginning its descent when she heard the approach of horses. Rushing to the window, she saw Owen returning, accompanied by a second horse, her mare, somehow recovered. She hurried outside, forgetting she wore only his shirt and trousers. "You found Maple." Owen dismounted, a pleased expression on his face. "Found her at the Hansons', actually. She made her way there during the storm. Smart animal. Clara, did you see my sister? Is she well?" "She's fine, just worried about you. Sends these." He handed over a bundle of women's clothing. "Says she'll expect us tomorrow, weather permitting." "Us? I promise to escort you safely," Owen said, leading both horses to the stable. "Can't have you getting lost in another blizzard, can we?" That evening, as they shared what had become their routine meal together, Tallulah found herself studying Owen's face in the firelight, memorizing the lines around his eyes that deepened when he smiled, the way his hair curled slightly at his collar. "Tell me about your life before Wyoming," she said suddenly. Owen looked up, surprise flashing across his features. "Not much to tell." "I don't believe that," Tallulah pressed gently. 7 years is a long time to be alone with your thoughts. You must have stories." Something in his expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "I grew up in a small town outside Philadelphia. Father was a blacksmith. Joined up with the Union when I was 19. Spent 4 years watching friends die." He paused, his gaze fixed on the fire. "When it was over, home didn't feel like home anymore." "I'm sorry," Tallulah said softly. "That was presumptuous of me to ask." Owen shook his head. "No, it's all right. Just been a while since I talked about it." He looked up, his eyes meeting hers. "What about you? What drove a Boston lady to the wilds of Wyoming?" Tallulah smiled ruefully. "Would you believe a novel? Depends on the novel. My Life on the Frontier by Elizabeth Cooper. I found it in my father's library when I was 16. He was furious when he caught me reading it, said it wasn't proper literature for a young lady." She traced the rim of her coffee cup. "But it planted a seed. The idea that a woman could have adventures, could build something of her own out here. And has it been what you hoped? This frontier life?" Tallulah considered the question. "It's harder," she admitted. "The cold is colder, the work is harder, the comforts fewer. But the sky is bigger, and so are the possibilities." She smiled. "I don't regret it." Owen nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Freedom has its price." "Yes," she agreed, "but it's worth paying." They talked late into the night, the space between them seeming to shrink with each exchanged story, each shared laugh. When Tallulah finally retired to the bed, she lay awake for a long time, listening to Owen's steady breathing across the room and wondering at the strange turns of fate that had brought her to his door. Morning brought clear skies and the promise of safe travel. Tallulah dressed in her sister's clothes, a practical wool dress and heavy coat, and packed her dried garments. As Owen readied the horses, she took one last look around the cabin that had been her sanctuary. "Ready?" Owen asked from the doorway. Tallulah nodded, suddenly reluctant to leave this place where time had seemed suspended, where she'd come to know this quiet, thoughtful man. The ride to Cottonwood Creek was breathtaking. The world gleamed white and pristine under the blue sky, the snow crunching beneath the horses' hooves the only sound for miles. Owen rode beside her, occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing stories about the land. See that ridge there? Come spring, it'll be covered in wildflowers. Blues and yellows mostly, some reds if the winter's been wet enough. Tallulah tried to imagine it, this frozen landscape transformed by color and life. I'd like to see that, she said, then blushed at what her words implied. Owen glanced at her, something warm kindling in his eyes. Maybe you will. The Hanson farm appeared in the early afternoon, smoke rising cheerfully from the chimney. Before they'd even dismounted, the door flew open and Clara Hanson rushed out, her pregnant belly prominent beneath her apron. "Tallulah!" she cried, embracing her sister fiercely. "We were so worried." Tallulah returned the embrace, realizing how much she'd missed her sister. "I'm fine, thanks to Mr. Palmer." Clara turned to Owen, who stood respectfully to the side. "Mr. Palmer, we can't thank you enough." "It was nothing, Mrs. Hanson," Owen replied, hat in hand. "Anyone would have done the same." "Nonsense," Clara declared. "You're a hero, and you'll stay for dinner at the very least." Over a hearty meal with Clara and Eric Hanson, Tallulah watched Owen interact with her family, saw how easily he fit into their warm kitchen, how thoughtfully he spoke with Eric about spring planting and cattle prices. Clara noticed too, shooting her sister knowing glances whenever Owen wasn't looking. "You'll stay the night, of course," Clara insisted as the meal concluded. "It's too far to return to your ranch before dark." Owen hesitated, glancing at Tallulah. "I don't want to impose." "It's no imposition," Eric assured him. "We've plenty of room." Later, as the sisters washed dishes together, Clara nudged Tallulah gently. "So, 3 days alone in a cabin with Mr. Palmer?" Tallulah felt her cheeks warm. "It wasn't like that. He was a perfect gentleman." Clara hummed skeptically. "And that's why you can't stop looking at him? Because he's such a gentleman?" "Clara!" Tallulah protested, but couldn't deny the charge. "He saved my life. And stole your heart in the process, it seems." Tallulah sighed, setting down the plate she was drying. "It doesn't matter. I have my position in Sweetwater Creek, and he has his ranch. Our paths crossed by chance, that's all." Clara touched her sister's arm. "Tallulah, chance is just another word for opportunity sometimes." She glanced toward the main room where the men were talking. "And he looks at you the same way you look at him." That night, unable to sleep in Clara's guest room, Tallulah slipped downstairs for a glass of water. She was surprised to find Owen seated by the dying fire, similarly restless. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly, joining him. Owen shook his head. "Too used to the quiet of my own place, I guess." Tallulah settled into the chair opposite him. "I wanted to thank you again, for everything." "You've thanked me enough," Owen replied with a small smile. "No," Tallulah said earnestly. "Not just for saving me from the blizzard, for the conversations, for treating me as an equal, for—" She hesitated. "For showing me a kindness I didn't expect to find out here." Owen was quiet for a long moment, the firelight playing across his features. "You know, when I found you in that storm, I thought I was just doing what needed to be done, helping someone in trouble." He looked up, his eyes meeting hers. "I didn't expect you to change things." "Change things?" Tallulah's heart quickened. "My cabins never felt empty before," Owen said simply. "Now it will." The words hung between them, laden with meaning. Tallulah found herself unable to look away from his gaze, unable to deny the connection that had formed so quickly and unexpectedly. "I return to Sweetwater Creek tomorrow," she said softly. "The new term starts in 3 days." Owen nodded, understanding and disappointment mingling in his expression. "It's a good position for you. Important work." "Yes," Tallulah agreed. But Sweetwater isn't so far from your ranch, is it? Hope flickered in Owen's eyes. About a day's ride, less in good weather. And a teacher might appreciate visits, Tallulah continued, her courage growing. Perhaps even regular ones. Owen leaned forward, his voice low. Miss Zimmerman, are you suggesting I court you properly? Tallulah smiled, her heart light despite the seriousness of the moment. Mr. Palmer, I believe I am. The months that followed were a revelation for Tallulah. Owen rode to Sweetwater Creek every other weekend, taking a room at the local hotel and escorting her to church, to community socials, to simple picnics by the creek when the weather permitted. Their courtship, conducted under the watchful but approving eyes of the townsfolk, blossomed as winter gave way to spring. True to his word, Owen took her to see the wildflower-covered ridge when the snow melted. They sat among the blues and yellows and reds, discussing books and dreams and the future. I've been thinking, Owen said as they watched clouds drift across the vast Wyoming sky. The ranch house is too small. Tallulah glanced at him, puzzled by the abrupt change in conversation. Is it? For one person, it's fine, Owen continued, plucking a wildflower and twirling it between his fingers. But for two, it would need expansion. Maybe an extra room for books, a proper kitchen. Tallulah's breath caught as she understood his meaning. Are you planning to take in boarders, Mr. Palmer? Owen smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners in the way she'd grown to love. No, Miss Zimmerman. I'm planning to take a wife if she'll have me. He shifted to face her fully, the wildflower still in his hand. I know it hasn't been that long, and I know you value your independence. Your teaching means the world to you, and I wouldn't ask you to give it up. Sweetwater Creek isn't so far that you couldn't still teach, at least until he broke off, suddenly unsure. Until, Tallulah prompted, her heart racing. Until children come along if you want them, Owen finished, his expression vulnerable. I'm not doing this right. I had a speech prepared. Tallulah laughed, joy bubbling up inside her. Owen Palmer, are you asking me to marry you? Yes, he said simply. I am. I love you, Tallulah. I think I've loved you since I found you in that blizzard, though I didn't know it then. Tallulah reached for his hand, twining her fingers with his. I love you too, she whispered. And yes, I will marry you. Owen's face lit with such happiness that Tallulah felt her own heart might burst. He slipped a simple silver ring from his pocket, not grand or ostentatious, but perfectly suited to their life together. It was my mother's, he explained as he placed it on her finger. I had it sized for you in Laramie last month. Last month? Tallulah raised an eyebrow. Rather confident, weren't you? Owen laughed, pulling her close. Hopeful, he corrected, before kissing her with all the tenderness and passion she'd come to expect from this quiet, remarkable man. They were married that summer in the little church at Sweetwater Creek, with Clara and Eric Hansen standing as witnesses. Tallulah wore a dress of cream-colored silk that Clara had helped her sew, adorned with wildflowers from the ridge where Owen had proposed. True to his word, Owen expanded the cabin, adding a room filled with bookshelves for Tallulah's growing collection. She continued teaching through the fall term, riding to and from Sweetwater Creek with Owen at the beginning and end of each week, an arrangement that raised eyebrows but worked for them. When winter came again, bringing with it the anniversary of their meeting, Owen surprised her with a new sleigh, sturdy and enclosed against the Wyoming cold. So you'll never be lost in a blizzard again, he explained, helping her into its cushioned interior. Tallulah laughed, pulling him in beside her. I wasn't lost, she corrected, nestling against him as snow began to fall softly around them. I was finding my way home. 2 years later, as another winter settled over the Wyoming territory, Tallulah sat by the fire in their expanded cabin, a small bundle cradled in her arms. Owen watched from the doorway, his expression one of wonder and deep contentment. "She has your eyes," Tallulah observed as their daughter's tiny hand curled around her finger. Owen crossed the room to join them, settling beside his wife and child. "And your determination. Did you see how she fought the midwife?" Tallulah smiled, leaning against his shoulder. "What shall we name her?" Owen considered the sleeping infant. "Clara, after your sister?" "Clara," Tallulah agreed. "Clara Hope Palmer." Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing their ranch in pristine white. But inside, warmed by fire and love, Tallulah felt only gratitude for the blizzard that had once threatened her life but ultimately led her home. As their daughter slept peacefully between them, Tallulah reflected on the journey that had brought her here from the proper parlors of Boston to a teacher's position in Sweetwater Creek. From a terrifying storm to the arms of a man who had become her anchor and her adventure all at once. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked, his arm around her shoulders. Tallulah smiled, turning to meet his gaze. "That sometimes getting lost is the only way to find where you truly belong." Owen nodded, understanding as he always did. "And do you belong here?" Tallulah looked around at the cabin they'd built together, at their sleeping daughter, at the man who had wrapped her close and guided her home in more ways than one. "More than anywhere else in the world," she answered, and knew it was the absolute truth.